Welcome to Rolling Through Negotiations podcast, sister.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Lovely to meet you, brother. And I'm a bit nervous, but I'm excited.
I'm excited as well, and I'm really excited to hear your thoughts, your vision, your inspiration when it comes to Black excellence, because before we started recording this podcast, you said you really want to be able to get that message of Black excellence out there. So for Aboriginal listeners that might be joining in and listening to us right now, what message do you have for them? And for non-Aboriginal listeners who may have never even heard of the concept Black excellence, what do you have to say for them?
So excellent question. Look, Black excellence means something different to everyone, but I want people to understand that it is a true thing. So often in the media, social media, the discourse about us mob has been deficit. It's been we're vulnerable, we're disadvantaged, we're broken, all of the words that you'll never hear come out of my mouth, and certainly not the way that I want my mob to be described. And so I love the positivity around Black excellence. And you and I spoke around a phrase that I use quite often. It's a Clairism, and I call First Nations diamonds because they're rare. They've been made under pressure and they're expensive. And by that, I mean that to employers, they should know that we are more than worth it. And so I think a lot of the messaging out there is employers are doing us a favour by bringing us into workplaces, or somehow we are not excellent. We are excellent. We have always been excellent. And I think the media has had a really large role to play in telling the story for us and to us, not through our own stories. And so I think in our DNA has always been Black excellence. I think that so many people pay money to do storytelling classes. How do you get someone on board for a project? How do you pitch into someone? That's storytelling. We've been doing that as the oldest living culture since forever, and we're excellent at it. And so if one of the key competencies of being an executive or being a leader or being anyone who is successful in this world is storytelling, we've got it in spades. Not only that, people pay for networking classes. My Lord, we are connected. We are connected to country. We're connected to each other. We're connected through songlines. We're connected through cousins and relatives, but we can network. That is also in our DNA and natural to do so. And so we don't need a class in storytelling. We don't need a class in networking. And my particular pride is seeing that, as we know, until 1972, under the Clean, Clad and Courteous policy in New South Wales, we weren't to be educated, we were exempt from going to school, which led to things like closing the gap. And again, sometimes that is a terminology that's seen as our problem to fix and do the heavy lifting for. But what I see now is we are not just aspirational and inspirational, but we have turned that completely around. We weren't allowed in the system for so long. And as a teacher, I know this all too well. You know, how can parents help kids with numeracy and literacy if they didn't go to school themselves? But these kids that are coming through now, my Lord, I work at NAB, and the interns that I see coming through, they have multiple degrees, they speak Mandarin, they have a master's in international business. They are phenomenal, and they are diamonds. Because yes, it's rare sometimes for us to have degrees because of the atrocities of the past and the policies of the past. But we have come through it resilient, and like a diamond, we might be rare and we might be made under pressure, and that's that pressure of the past that has been around us constantly. But we are certainly expensive and worth it. And so to me, Black excellence is how we show up. And we show up for mob, we show up for each other. We are extremely determined because of what's in our DNA to succeed, to bring people with us and to support others. So when you reached out and asked me to do this, I'm not doing this for me. I'd rather crawl into a ball and rock back and forth in a fetal position than be interviewed. But I want anyone who's listening to this, and you, Matthew, to know that you are inspirational. You are absolutely worthy of all the things, and the world needs you to take up space. And so to me, Black excellence is every single First Nations person, absolutely. But it's just absolutely my honour and NAB to see these kids come through who have just the qualifications, the skill sets, and the natural storytelling, the natural resilience, the natural networking that comes with being the oldest living culture.
And you too are a great example of Black excellence, Claire. I think that the way that you speak, the knowledge, the wisdom that you've just shared was done in a way of great humility. And I believe that humility is also part of that Black excellence piece. But sometimes the humility can be mistaken for lack of ability. And I think it's really important for Aboriginal people and non-Aboriginal people alike to always remember to embrace the ability within that Black excellence. We speak a lot about and we hear a lot about the disadvantage of Aboriginal peoples, closing the gap, and the disadvantage absolutely is very real. But what are the advantages of being Aboriginal?
What aren't they? Like, being First Nations and the oldest living culture is the most proudest thing. We have the most continued custodianship of this land. You know, our ancestors, we walk in the footsteps of greatness. Our ancestors walk every day with us and they have cleared the path for us. We stand on the shoulders of giants. And what First Nations know about this country that is just being discovered, whether it's bush tucker medicine, the fact that Gumby is good for just about everything. The fact that, you know, Marnie Helen will talk about knit bone and how, you know, if you hurt yourself, you use knit bone, which is comfrey. There is such knowledge in our people that, and you talked about humility. I think there is such humility and grace in First Nations culture, because if you look at stolen gen survivors, if you ever listen to an auntie or an uncle, they will drop wisdom with you and share so much of their time and their knowledge with you gracefully, despite what's happened, despite culture, you know, not being allowed to be spoken in some places, in language rejuvenation that's happening now. If you speak to First Nations community leaders, they are just so humble, even though they know a lot of things, more than I'll ever learn. And I always meet elders with such gratitude because, like, Uncle Greg Sims, who has now passed, and I'm sorry if this triggers anyone who may be related or knew Uncle Greg, famous Durrig elder, he used to say that reconciliation is playing the black and the white keys to make beautiful music. Now, his mum taught him that. And so I carry that when I speak about reconciliation everywhere, because no one can say it better than that. I'm sorry. Like, I've never heard anyone express it better. So when you're playing music, it makes beautiful music because we're playing at the same rhythm. No one's rushing ahead and leaving anyone behind. And so we need Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal, First Nations and non-First Nations in reconciliation for it to work, because this is a partnership. And so the little beautiful bits of wisdom that I pick up in 5 minutes with an elder, I carry with me and I love to share, because it just points out that in our DNA is excellence. In our DNA is storytelling. In our DNA is so much rich knowledge that if you just sit for 5 seconds with an elder, your life will be better and you'll learn something, you know. I just think it's just so beautiful that anytime I get to go into a community, it could be Walgett, it could be Brewarrina, it could be Menindee, Wilcannia, you name it. I will meet an elder, you know, Uncle Badger Bates, who's there in Barkindji, you know, his art, his knowledge of the land, his knowledge of men's business, not that he'd share that with me because I'm a woman, but I identify as female, but he and his son know how to care for country, how to hunt, how to do traditional law. And so anytime I get to listen to that where appropriate, I just feel that my life is better. So, you know, I just think we need to be proud of that. We need to tap into that. And I think there's so much to be proud of in terms of us as First Nations.
Absolutely. And when we speak about Black excellence and some of the many amazing principles that you've touched on already in this brief conversation that we've had, I think that there's so many things that you've already mentioned that gear us towards amazing negotiation outcomes. I mean, some of the things, one of the first parts of Aboriginal culture you spoke of today was about storytelling. And if we can become stronger as storytellers, whether we be an Aboriginal person or a non-Aboriginal person, it becomes a great vehicle of influence. And storytelling skills can be an amazing way of being able to influence negotiation outcomes. You speak about also network and purpose. So if we're negotiating in a type of situation when we have a network amongst us, we get the resources from others that we need to be able to achieve negotiation outcomes. Or we might need to achieve an outcome and the negotiation only begins once we've had that initial contact point with somebody amongst a network. And so this networking piece is also a powerful vehicle and an essential vehicle for negotiations to take place. If we were to play back what you've spoken already and think about these principles in the context of negotiations, we can really see how these principles, the ethos, what it means when we speak of Black excellence, also goes into and beyond what it means to be an excellent negotiator. So perhaps we can say that Aboriginal people are also amazing negotiators.
Well, look at you go, brother. So yeah, we are.
Look at you guys, sister. In this time, you've educated and shared and inspired me to be able to say Aboriginal people are amazing negotiators. And I think that we see this because if we see the amount of negotiation, the rallying, how many amazing Aboriginal leaders, elders, ancestors have knocked on government doors, have gone out there and continue to go out there to negotiate from such a place of disadvantage, you might be able to say, particularly in Western ways of seeing things. I think that the negotiation skills, despite such incredibly painful and unjust historic events, they show innate negotiation abilities.
And I think if you look at current negotiations that are happening around treaty or land rights that are constantly, and treaty, is more recent in many states, but the humility, the grace, the networks, the focus, the 100% focus, and not about themselves. Like, I think First Nations put mob first. I don't think we walk into a negotiating room and think, I'm going to win this for me. I think with everything we do, it's in our DNA to give to mob, share for mob, care for mob, advocate for mob in whatever room we're in. And I think that also makes us humble because we don't want to shame anyone. So, I would very much hate to be on this podcast right now and have anyone go, oh, like she said that about me. Or so I don't speak about people in negatives because I think that everyone should have someone advocating for them and cheerleading. I'm the biggest cheerleader for mob, 100%. I want us all to live our best lives and have self-determination, and which is something that we haven't had in this country. We haven't been able to determine if we're going to go to school. We hadn't been able to determine where we could live. We couldn't determine if we could speak our language. We couldn't determine where we could move to and from for such a long time that I think when we show up now in a room, we show up, as I said, walking in the footsteps of our ancestors with our old people, but also with that in mind of, I'm here. How do I kick that door in and leave it open for more mob to walk through this door and for them to do so safely? So one of my joys, I was in government for over 20 years, and some of the programs I stood up, whether it was negotiating for things to be on school sites. So we had 2,200 schools, 190 new schools being built in New South Wales. And it was my absolute pleasure to be able to slow down and say to the schools and the students who use that asset, who's going to have that asset for hundreds of years, 150 to 200 years, what can we do with this asset to support you? So whether it's putting in cold water taps, not hot taps, so that when the kids drink at the bubbler, it isn't gross, because we know how hot the bubblers can get. But them not drinking water is not great for dental health. So how can we solve health issues through the asset? Or conversely, how can I make this a safe place for you to feel like when you're walking in, your parents will come to parent-teacher night. You will feel like you can be your best self here. So whether it's decals on the side of the walls that show totems, whether it's a yarning circle, what is it that this asset can do to visually tell people that this is First Nations land? You are welcome here. Not only are you welcome here, but we want you here and we celebrate you here. And so negotiating that between, the school principal and the asset management people who are delivering, or the people who are building the asset, was something I did through storytelling, as I have just now. This is going to be here for hundreds of years. What else can we do? What other value can we add, given that schools are at the centre of community and First Nations people are a big part and an important part of that community? So how do we show up like that? So, and I've taken that now into NAB. How can we make sure that an institution, a bank that, has lots of staff, like we have like 40,000 staff at NAB, how can we ensure that it's a culturally safe place for more? How can we make sure we have a good brand out there because we want Black excellence? And we know that Black excellence is out there and we want to be an employer of choice. We want to be the bank of choice for First Nations. So how do we show up like that as one, as a bank, as 40,000 staff for First Nations to ensure economic prosperity, because careers and jobs are a key part of economic prosperity, but so is banking. Understanding your finance and being able to safely, culturally safely do that as a First Nations business or as a personal person banking. How can we make sure that the bank knows you and you're known, valued and cared for by that bank? And so all of those things is what lights my world on fire.
Yeah, it's really interesting as well, a lot of Aboriginal people's attitude when it comes to money. One of the recent podcast episodes that we did was with brother boy EJ Garrett. And during that episode, the topic of money came up. And I was speaking about, I actually said in that episode, I love money, really for the shock value, putting it very, very bluntly. The truth is, I think that money can achieve beautiful things and we can do amazing things for our families, for ourselves, for our communities, for loved ones. We can really set things up really powerfully for future generations through understanding, appreciating and applying money and truly embracing and understanding what money is. It's really interesting the amount of really community-focused people who don't naturally have the fond relationship, the positive relationship with money. Because by the end of the episode, EJ really did understand where I was coming from in terms of money, what it is, what we can do with it. And I think that part of this goes into the financial literacy and understanding of what money is. And I truly think that a lot of the reasons why people can sort of have their glaze go over their eyes when you start bringing things up about bank statements or balance sheets or profit and loss is because of a lack of understanding of what they're really looking at. And I believe that money is a beautiful currency that can, as an energetic resource, do amazing things.
I think so. And to your point, financial literacy, financial freedom, self-determination, that's linked, So and it also stops feeding that discourse. If you have financial freedom and you have self-determination, then a double dog dare anyone to call you broken, vulnerable, disadvantaged. You are in charge of that. And I'm proud that I work somewhere where we genuinely do help with financial literacy. We do go into communities and we support people to make sure that they understand how to budget or how to access loans or how to qualify for a loan. Or conversely, we might even have chats about children and accessing accounts, or we might even have hard chats about domestic violence and coercive control, and coercive control, the laws only came out last year. And so people are still grappling with what coercive control is. And so there is so much good a bank can do. And we say we're more than money. That's our phrase at NAB. And we say we're customer obsessed. And I think First Nations are naturally customer obsessed, yeah, because we're mob. You can't do something bad to your cousin and expect to go home at Christmas. And so to me, the translation of the words of customer obsession just translates to First Nations. We do it naturally. We care naturally. We think about impacts for the person in front of us naturally. And again, that's why I think, First Nations should come into a bank, because they absolutely have it in spades in terms of a natural skill set for caring for a customer and listening deeply. We're deep listeners. We are very deep listeners and deep thinkers. And I think banks need all of that. We're searching for that. We're saying, we want colleagues that are customer obsessed. We want people who want to win together and be collaborative. We want people to, be able to walk in two worlds, I guess. And so that's through the eyes of the customer and then through the eyes of the bank. We walk in two worlds all the time. We have to code switch all the time. So there's so much that Aboriginal and First Nations people can do. It's limitless. And that's why I talk about Black excellence. I just want to absolutely put a pin in that negative discourse that there's things we can't do. I don't think there's anything we can't do. I think that we can sometimes limit ourselves because we've been told that. I think sometimes people can put limits on us because they've heard that. But I would love 2026 to be the year that we stop doing that we talk about resilient, we talk about self-determination, we talk about aspirational, we talk about strength. We don't talk about the other words because they don't describe me, they don't describe you. I'm yet to meet a First Nations person who is broken. Systems can have impact on people, of course, and they do, and they have. But they haven't broken us. The fact that we're still here tells us they haven't broken us. The fact that we are still here as the longest living culture says that they can't break us. So, and hence the diamonds. A diamond is really hard to break.
You've had some amazing experiences, sister, both in government and corporate and also community and your life overall. And I would really love to hear your opinion on this. You mentioned a moment ago this idea, the theme, the ideology and the truth of walking in two worlds. There's many Aboriginal people, and there's probably a lot of Aboriginal people even listening to us right now who have grown up in a very assimilated environment. I used to think that being Aboriginal meant you must know 100% who you are and everything about being Aboriginal from the get-go. But I think that there's a lot of Aboriginal people through the separation and also through government policy, stolen generation, segregation. There's a lot of disconnection that has occurred amongst Aboriginal peoples and Aboriginal families in a multitude of ways. And sometimes I feel like it's like this. Imagine, sis, you said, let's play football. Like football, like the AFL football. No, real football, NRL. Right, but what if I wasn't interested in playing NRL? What if to me real football was AFL? And I say this because there's some Aboriginal communities where, in truth, those brothers and sisters, those particular people within clans, within some isolated places of Australia, aren't actually interested in playing the westernised game of business. They're not actually interested in embracing the game of the dollars and mainstream financial literacy. What they're most interested in is their own game, their own cultural and spiritual game. And sometimes I wonder whether there's a greater infliction of westernised ways through the model of mainstream society, because we see many incentives, many reasons, many rewards, many pats on the back and good on your brother, good on your sisters happening when a new job within a mainstream organisation or government organisation is achieved, when the westernised rewards are gained. But sometimes we forget the game that we really want to be playing. So my question for you on this, sister, that I'd really love to hear your mind and your views and your heart about is it necessary for Aboriginal peoples to be embracing the systems, the structures, the financial institutions that mainstream society imposes so that Aboriginal people in contemporary society of Australia can move forwards?
Gosh, that's a big question. I believe in self-determination, brother. I think this is our country. This is our place. Country is everything to us. And so if that's the case, which it is, we can choose. So if your spirit says, I want to go to uni and do law and be in a law firm, or I want to go to uni and work in legal aid or in ALS or something like that, then that's what your spirit has. And so then we should all rally around you to cheer you on, support you where we can as mob, and to ensure that your dream and self-determination happens. So, I really believe that it should be your choice. if you wish to work in community, fantastic. You shouldn't have to leave. When we were designing the school infrastructure traineeship, which was the first ever cross-government, cross-industry traineeship that got stood up in 2020, because I heard that a third of our young ones were destined to be unemployed for the rest of their lives because of this thing called COVID. We stood it up and we looked at how we could help First Nations kids across Australia New South Wales, into government or into, industry for infrastructure, and also give them a certificate. So they got a Cert 4 in procurement or business or project management, which also could open a door for them to go to uni, but also would give them a job. And these kids sometimes didn't have great literacy and numeracy because they'd also been home with COVID. For that year of schooling, they hadn't done the HSC in the normal way. Or they didn't have the support. And so they were self-determined. They chose who they wanted to work with for the traineeship through their rotations. They chose what they studied. They chose their destination. And so also they chose where. So if they wanted to stay in community, if they wanted to be in Dubbo or Moree, then we would work with a local council to get them the work experience on their rotation. We didn't expect them all to come to Sydney. And I think that's the mistake, where we demand that First Nations move to a city and come off country. I think a good employer would say, where your employee, we've got a role. Obviously, we can't move all roles, but where we can, I think for me in that example with the kids, I'd say, if you want to stay in Dubbo or Moree, fine, I'll do your rotations in Dubbo or Moree, because you shouldn't have to leave home and country to do this work, and because it can be scarring, to be away from your family, yes, to be away from country, all of those things. And I quite often hear people say, I'm going back to country for some healing, or I'm just missing country so much, I'm going to go home. I think it's true. You want to put your feet in your mother, which is like our spirit. You want to put your feet on country, and you want to get that soaked up into your veins. And I think self-determination, from that question you asked, I want mob to do what they need to do to live their best lives. So if you want to go to uni and you want to work in a big institution or in a big corporate, or you want to work in a community or a ACO, Aboriginal controlled organisation, do it. There shouldn't be a barrier to you doing that. And if there is, then, people who are like me, who were once teachers, once a teacher, always a teacher, have got your back. Like, I love when people reach in on LinkedIn and go, hey, sis girl, like, I've got a son and he doesn't quite know what he wants to do, but maybe he could apply for one of your roles at NAB. Happy to have a yarn, because what transferable skills does he have? Does he even know what the areas of the bank are? Because there's so many areas of a bank. Where does he want to work from? Like, that curiosity. I think our culture is a learning culture and a curious culture. And anytime someone reaches in, it absolutely is my privilege to help. And so to your question, just like you would with your family, you want them to have what they want. You want them to achieve their goals, because that will fulfill their life and they'll be happy and pass that happiness on. So if you want to work in a big corporate, then the world is your oyster. Like, you are the oldest living culture. Stand in that truth and then work out a plan. And if you can't work out a plan, then contact a person like Matthew. If you want to go and do law, hit up a brother and say, oi, I want to be you when I grow up. How do I do that? Because there's so many of us who didn't have mums or dads or aunties or uncles who'd gone through the schooling system or uni system to ask them that question, how do I go about this? So I think your generation, you're probably not as old as me, but our generation were possibly the first to go to uni. And so we should be passing that forward to these young bubs coming through and saying, we've learnt in a different time, maybe a harder time than you, but we've got some experiences. Tell us where you want to go, and our networks, which we're very good with, can help you.
I love the wisdom again that you've just shared, Claire, because I feel the great sense of embracing who you are and the authenticity that comes from this self-determination that you speak of. And so I feel like part of the answer to the question that I asked, and I think it was a really broad question, but your answer, I think, is incredibly powerful. I feel a great sense of you saying it's about doing what you want to be doing, what is right for you, embracing who you are, including that part of you or the whole of you that is an Aboriginal person, but there is no one size fits all container that you must fit in to be able to tick the box as an Aboriginal person, but instead it's about embracing from your heart, your spirit, your soul, your mind, your journey in that self-determination and being authentic in your movement and direction forwards.
100%. And I think in that networking piece, like First Nations are intertwined, interconnected. And so, you reached out to me, but you'll know people I know. People who are watching now will know people that we know and will know each other. So I really want the messaging to be, please don't feel like you're alone. Like when you're sitting there and life is hard, life is hard. I'm not going to put glitter on it. Life is hard. It just is, right? But when you are determining for yourself in your spirit, if it is my life's passion is to be a teacher, okay, good. Then what teachers do you know? Who do they know? And how can they help you map that out if you don't know how, but that's your calling? Or it might be, oh gosh, I'm an introvert, so I don't want to talk to anyone. What sort of job can I do where I don't have to talk to anyone, but I really like doing X? Then go and talk to people in your networks and say, who do you know that kind of does this sort of thing? Could I do that? Aboriginal businesses are amazing at starting something and having creative ideas. We're naturally creative, telling the pitch because they're great at storytelling, negotiating, as you just quite rightly said, my learned friend. But also businesses need backers. They need people who cheer them on, who talk about them when they're not in the room. And so as First Nations people, absolutely we should be cheering each other on. We should be standing there saying, if you need it and I have it, I will share it. If I don't know it, let me help you find someone who might. That stuff feeds my soul. I love watching us help each other. And then, one of the sayings that I know that one of the aunties told me is that you want to be the night sky, not the stars, because the night sky makes the stars shine. So I want to be the night sky. I want you all to be your deadly selves and shine and just live your best lives as would have happened if colonization hadn't happened. Do you know what I mean? So I think it is all of our privilege and all of our responsibility to stand up and show up for each other.
And I think that's such a beautiful, beautiful metaphor. I want to be able to give some love to that teacher side of you, Claire. What can you teach us about banking?
Yeah, look, I'm not going to give financial advice because I'm not a banker. I work in a bank, but I'm not a banker. When I hear people have conversations that can be hard, and it might be, you can't have the loan right now, but if we model it like this, we can get here, because we don't want you to sign up for something you can't afford, nor can we under the regulations, but we don't want that for you. We want you to get there. And so what I've learned about banking, I guess, is how many areas there are in a bank. Lord. In government, I thought there were lots of areas, but in banking, there are just so many areas. So in terms of careers, there's so many areas you can go into and they're really cool and exciting. As a non-banker, for me to come in from government public service for over 20 years and go, oh my goodness, I'm in industry now, I thought it would be a big difference. But my public servant in me and the teacher in me, who 100% cares all the time, I can't help it, was sort of sitting and watching to see what it would be like in a bank, particularly with a value like customer obsession. What does that mean? Because we came out with the customer as the center of all we do in government some time ago. And so what does that mean in industry? And, I couldn't be gammon if I tried. I'm not going to tell you if it's not true, but the care that I see people have is the same care that I'd want for my nan. And it's not, yes, you can have it. That's not always the answer. And sometimes people can get frustrated with that. But the yes, you can have it if you're not ready is not great. It's not great for anyone. But the support to get you there is what I'm always validated to see. So to me, I love seeing the circle of life in a bank. You might come in this way, but end up here. You might think you're coming in for a loan, but actually you end up getting a financial plan. So I just love all the ways that we can help, because self-determination does come through economic prosperity. It does. You have, I'm sorry, we live in this society, we do, where you need access to money to sustain yourself 99.9% of the time. And so in a bank, we can help you with that. And so we have the privilege and the honor and the responsibility to help people through that so that they can understand. So what I've learned about banks is they're infinitely complex in terms of lots and lots of jobs and lots of people who do really cool things and smart things. But also it's filled with, because I thought public servants are excellent. They're here to serve the public and they deeply care. But I was delighted that a financial institution is not that much different with the absolute care for people. So I've learnt that banks can care, I guess, is what I've learnt. And I've also learnt that if you don't know, it's okay. Like I didn't know what to ask the financial planner. I didn't know what the good questions were. And so I was just really honest. I said, look, I don't know. I know what success looks like. I know what life I want to be living when I'm 90. I still want to be living when I'm 90. So can you backwards map it for me and tell me what I can and can't do? Even to things like when can I renovate my house? You know, they put all that in a plan and it really does help you take a deep breath and go, okay, I'm not retiring this year, but I'll be retiring in this year, we think, if I do these things and if I save this here and then in this year I can do my renovation. I think I know that I'm not, and I know that people I know aren't great at knowing that that's possible. So if you don't know how to do it, there are people out there who'll do it for you. How cool is that? That's what a bank can do. I didn't know that. I might be really stupid, but I didn't know that that was something that I could genuinely have a conversation and not be an expert in financial modeling or economics at all, and have someone who is help me in a kind, generous way that was a two-way communication. This, not that. I'd never invest in that. I'm a low-risk person. Don't give me anything that's high risk because this is everything I have. Don't lose it, you know, and they were really kind in that conversation. So I think what I'm learning is that banks are full of really smart people, but more importantly, you're allowed to say you don't know and they will help you.
Yeah, beautiful. Thanks for sharing the little bit of that banking wisdom with us as well, sister.
I don't know if it was banking wisdom, brother, but I know that if someone like me can go, help me, anyone can.
Yeah, and part of what you're speaking about then is negotiating through organisations and being able to create relationships and learn organisational structures to help you get from here to where you want to be.
And that
there's
you don't have to
negotiation in that process.
Yeah, and you don't have to be the smartest person. Like, you're smart, no doubt, but I don't know what you know. You don't know what I know. And so coming in with that sense of I know what success looks like, can you help me map that? And then taking that away and thinking about it, I think is always a great process because, you know, alone you're smart, but together we could be brilliant.
Absolutely. Another example of Black excellence, the community focus, the many together. As the saying goes, many hands makes light work. We're about to wrap up this episode, but before we do, I want to make this the last question for today, Claire. And it's this. If there was something in your heart that you wanted to make sure the world heard to create a better place, what would that be?
Kindness is the greatest form of intelligence. So it doesn't make you smarter or better to be mean or hateful or to push people down, to not include people, to exclude people. I think kindness is a superpower, and I think we're all capable of it, and it doesn't take a lot of effort. And if we all showed up every day just kind, nothing else, just kind, I think this world and all of us would be better for it, because you wouldn't be in too much of a hurry to help someone. You wouldn't be only thinking of yourself in a negotiation. You'd be thinking of all of the impacts to all of the people for the period of the project. But you would show up. You can negotiate, as you know, Matthew, in a kind way, in a way that meant you listened, in the way that everyone feels like they're winning, even if they're not, because they feel the kindness in that discussion. And dignity is the second thing. I think that when I'm not always perfect, no one is, but when I'm with someone even if it's a hard conversation, and no one likes having hard conversations. So it could be a conversation about, do you really feel that you're doing well in this role? I have some feedback. Or it could be even to your partner. I don't like when you do that. But if you leave the dignity in the conversation, so if you have your dignity and I maintain mine, I can have a hard conversation and you still feel okay about that because your dignity is intact. So said with kindness and allowing you the dignity of being able to ask questions, have it on your terms. So I don't have a hard conversation with you when you're not expecting it, because no one likes that. That's shock. So we are the oldest living culture. And if our ancestors and stolen gen survivors can rock up every day with dignity, and they do, after everything they've been through, they are the most dignified, graceful people I've ever met, willing to slow down, willing to educate government, willing to educate us all, willing to stand and speak their truth again and again so it doesn't happen again. If they can maintain their dignity, if they can maintain their grace, if we in such hard conversations to hear from their experiences can maintain our dignity in that conversation, then everyone wins. So I think that if I'm allowed two things, because I'm a 2-for-1 person, you give me one thing, I'll take two in terms of what can we give the world, kindness and dignity, because everyone wins in that conversation.
So beautiful. And I love your message about kindness, because I think that if, as you say, if the world was a kinder place, if we were able to ensure when we're communicating and doing things with and for others, we keep their dignity at the front of mind, then I think that everybody is better off at the end of the process. I love the work you do, sister, and I really appreciate you coming on to Rolling Through Negotiations podcast. Hopefully we can connect again and even have you on as a guest some other time. And until then, keep doing the deadly stuff for mob in banking, the work that you do, and keep on inspiring us all.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you for having me, and to all those listening, thank you. Connect with me if you're thinking about careers and roles. I'm here for that, but connect with us anyway. We talked about networks. Our networks are your networks. We want you to have self-determination and economic prosperity and just to live your deadly lives. So shine like the diamonds you are. And Matt, you're a diamond. So thank you for having me.
You're a diamond too, sister. And all you diamonds out there that have enjoyed this podcast, remember to like, share and subscribe to Rolling Through Negotiations so we can keep on bringing you more great episodes just like this one. Us.